All right, in this video, we're continuing to talk about factoring, but this time, instead of x squared plus bx plus c, we are focusing on the type ax squared plus bx plus c. So now we're going to have a coefficient in front of our squared term. So in your material, there's I believe two different quizzes, one that says basic and one that says advanced. So basic, obviously, just the ones like example 1. Advanced would be the ones like example 2. So the steps that you're going to follow on the basic type are, number 1, bring the GCF to the front. We are going to factor out the greatest common factor. Then what's left, we are going to chart factor, just like we did in the last video. So, example 1, factor the trinomial. I've got 6x cubed plus 18x squared minus 24x. Now, you might be thinking, but that says cubed and this says ax squared. Exactly. Anytime you see a problem in these quizzes, tests, in this section, if the degree is higher than 2, that means that there is a variable common factor. So if you look at all of these terms, there are 3 terms in my trinomial, they all have an x in common. Now that doesn't mean that that's the only common factor. I need to look at the coefficients as well. So I need to ask myself, what's the greatest number that divides 6, 18, and 24? Hopefully you know that that answer is 6. You can of course test things out with your calculator. So with my GCF, I have a 6 and I have the common factor x. So when we say bring it to the front, that means we're factoring it out, we're dividing it out. So what I write next is what I get when I divide each term by 6x. So 6 divided by 6 is 1. X cubed divided by x is x squared. So 1x squared, remember that we don't write the ones, for my first term. For my second term, I do 18 divided by 6, which is 3. X squared divided by x, which is x. Then negative 24 divided by 6, which is negative 4. X divided by x is 1, so the x's cancel out. So I've done step 1. I've brought my GCF to the front. Now I'm going to take what's left, this trinomial, and I'm going to chart factor it. So I look at my sign rule chart that I had in the last video, and I have a positive and a negative. So I'm listing the factors of negative 4. And I know that one is going to be plus and one is going to be minus. So 1, negative 4, negative 1, positive 4, 2, negative 2. I don't need to switch the signs here because it gives me the same thing. And since I'm back around to the other side, I know that's it. So on the sums, I get negative 3, 3, and 0. So I wanted, because my b value is 3, I want these ones. Now here's what's really important on this basic type. Don't forget to bring this guy down into the final answer. Your final answer, yes, you're going to have the x minus 1 and the x plus 4, but you also have to have that 6x, because this factored trinomial has 3 factors, one that's a monomial and 2 that are binomials. So make sure all pieces are included in the final answer. Remember also that you may see some where you're working backward, where they give you this answer and ask which trinomial you would get. In that case, working backward, you would distribute the 6x first, so that'd give me 6x squared minus 6x, and then you would FOIL it with your x plus 4. So 6x squared times x is 6x cubed. 6x squared times 4 is 24x squared. Negative 6x times x is negative 6x squared. And then last, negative 6x times 4 is negative 24x. Notice middle terms do give me 18x squared. Remember, this is just my check, and just to illustrate for you if you had one of those working backward problems. All right, now we're going to move on to B. So I picked this one on purpose because people look at it and they're like, oh, well, they don't have an x in common, and this is a 1, a -1, so there is no GCF. That is not true here. When we chart factor, our x squared has to be positive. So in this case, I have to have a GCF of -1 because I have to factor that negative away from the x squared. So if I factor out a -1, all that's really doing is it's going to change all the signs. So that would make this positive x squared, -9x, positive 20. Now, in a final answer, we don't write the 1 part, we just leave the negative out in front. So when we're done, we're going to have the negative in front, and we're going to have our 2 binomials. So to find out what those binomials are, I make my chart. So this time, make sure you look at the second step for your list. So I want the factors of 20, and do my sign check. It's a positive here, which means both signs have to be the same. In this case, because this is negative, they both have to be minus. So to get positive 20, it could be -1 with -20, -2 with -10. It's not divisible by 3. Or it could be -4 with -5. I'm back around, so I know there aren't any more. On my sums, I have these. So winners are right here, x -4, x -5. And then this would be my final answer. So for the quiz on the basic type, this is what you're going to have to do. Now for the advanced type, these ones are trickier and they require more time. We're still going to need to bring the GCF to the front if there is one. But then we have a completely different process. These are not chart factorable. They're what we call the guess and check type. There are some other, popular ways to teach this factoring. All right, so looking here at example 2a, factoring this trinomial. So first, I always look for a GCF. So they don't all have x's, so no variable GCF. 3, 5, 2 are all prime. So this one does not have a GCF, so that means I can skip straight to step 2, which is to list the factor pairs of my A. When we're talking about A, remember we're talking about, the title of this section, ax squared plus bx plus c. So A are these guys. So I'm going to list the factor pairs that would multiply to 3. Remember that because we always want our leading coefficient to be positive, if it's not, we would factor that out as a GCF. These that I'm listing would always be pluses. So 1 and 3, since it's prime, are the only choices. So that makes step 2 easy because I've only got one set of factor pairs. Step 3, I do the same thing, but for C. Make sure that you follow the sign rules, the same sign rules that we learned in the first video apply here. When I am listing these factors of +2, I have to look at the sign of this guy. This is a minus, so what I'm listing should all be negatives. So -1 times -2. And again, since 2's prime, this is my only choice. Now, step 4 is to guess and check, and how you do that matters. So the factors of A go in front of the variables. your factors of C are the constants of the binomial. So what that means is I am taking this format where I know these are both going to be minuses, right? So I'm going to have either 1x or 3x here. It doesn't matter which one you do in which place because the order isn't important. And then I'm going to have 1 and 2 in the backs. Now, what we have to do is we have to guess and check with that location, even though there's only one factor pair. If I do 2 here and 1 here, when I go to check it with my foiling, which remember you should be doing at least mentally, you don't have to write it out. When I go to check this, I would get on the O and I part, which is what I really need to check, I would get negative 1x and negative 6x, which is negative 7x. So this is a no. This doesn't give me the negative 5x that I want. So that's why we call guess and check. Don't forget the and check part because this one isn't right. So all that means is I know I don't have another set of factors. It means I need to try those second factors in the opposite order. So now I'm going to put the -1 here and the -2 here and try it again. Now when I go to check it, I get negative 2x here, I get negative 3x here, which does give me a total of negative 5x, which is true. So this would be my answer. So again, in your quiz problems, some of them are going to work backward. They'll give you, the factors and ask you which trinomial it gives, so you can FOIL it back out. Some of them will give you the trinomial, but maybe only list one of the factors instead of both, and then sometimes they give you both. All right, example 2, always, always, always remember to look for a GCF first. So I look, I do not have an x on the last term, so no variable common factors. 4 and 6 are both divisible by 2, but 5 is not. 5's prime, and these aren't divisible by 5. So again, this one does not have a common factor, so I go to step 2. I'm going to list my factors for A. Remember, your A should always be positive, so these are always pluses that you're listing. So 1 and 4 multiply to 4 could also be 2 and 2. Now I'm going to go to step 3, list the factor pairs for C. I have to pay attention to my sign rules. Since my constant is negative, I know that that means, with this being a plus, that these are going to be 1 positive and 1 negative. So factors of 6, we would start with 1 and 6, but I have 2 choices to list. It can be 1 with negative 6 or negative 1 with positive 6. Then it could be 2 and negative 3 or negative 2, positive 3. And those are my only choices. So now I'm going to go guess and check. Now with this one, you'll see that I have more choices here. So instead of being locked into x and 3x, I could either have x and 4x or 2x and 2x. So I usually start at the bottom with the factors that are closer together. They are correct more often than the ones that are further apart, but that doesn't mean that they're always correct. So I would start with 2x and 2x in the front. And then again, I'd start with the factors that are closer together here as well. So one thing that can help you with your guessing and checking, this is so important. This is the best hint that you could ever get. Your binomials can't, if you've done these steps correctly, have a common factor. So if I've done 2x and 2x, that means I can't put -2 in here because then there would be a common factor with those binomials. So I know, because both of these are 2, that neither of them could have a 2 here, so don't have to try this. If I go to try this, 2 and 6 are both divisible by 2, which means I can't put a 6 here either. So actually, this, without even having to fill any of these in, I know that it can't be the 2 and the 2 this time, because that would force me to have a common factor in my binomials. So I know it's not going to work, so I'm going to try the 1x and the 4x. Again, when I go, I'm going to start with the ones that are closer together. This 4 is divisible by 2, so I cannot put a 2 there. So I'm going to start with this bottom set of factors with the 2 here and the 3 here. Now this is just my guess. I still have to check. So my check, I only check the O's and the I's, outsides and insides. X times 3 is 3x. -2 times 4x is -8x, which gives me -5x. What I was looking for was +5x. This is actually great news, because if I get the right number but the wrong sign, all that means is that I have the right factor pair, I just have chosen the wrong signs. So what I really need are these ones. So this was a no, this doesn't work, but I do actually now know without having to recheck that my answer is the same factors but with the signs switched. So this would be my factors for this trinomial. All right, last one. Look for my GCF first, always. So no variable GCF. So I've got 6, 33, 15. These are all divisible by 3. So I take my 3 out to the front, and just like we did up here with the GCFs, I then kind of work backwards. So 6 divided by 3 is 2, so 2x squared. 33 divided by 3 is 11, so 11x. 15 divided by 3 is 5. Now, when you do have a GCF in front, it's important to know that step 2, when I'm listing the factor pairs of A, it's my new A and my new C. So factors of 2, the only ones are 2 and 1 because 2 is prime. And lucky us, 5 is also prime. Don't forget my sign rules. So I have a positive C, B is +2, so both positives are what I should be listing. So in my final answer, just like in the basic type, don't forget to bring that GCF down to the next step. So the 3 is still in front, and now I'm going to have my 2 parentheses. So I know that it has to be 2x and 1x. We don't write the 1. And I know it has to be 1 and 5. It's just a matter of getting them in the right order. So +1 +5 is my guess. Now I'm going to check it. So 2x times 5 is 10x. 1 times x is 1x. When I add those together, I get 11x, which is what I was looking for here. So this is a yes, which means good for us. This is our final answer. We've got 2 binomial factors plus my monomial factor, and those 3 multiplied together is my final answer. Make sure that you check in if you've got any questions or if you're having trouble with your practice problems.